Is Caroline Girvan good for fat loss? I lost 40 pounds all while doing Caroline Girvan programs. So I feel like I am the right person to answer this question. And I also want to be honest with you about the answer actually is because it's not a yes simply. The answer is yes, but with one condition. And the condition is the thing that most people skip entirely. I started Caroline Girvan programs in 2021, and I've completed nearly every single program, both on YouTube and in her app. And I genuinely mean nearly all of them. Caroline Girvan offers free YouTube fitness programs, but she also does have the app, and we'll talk about that later. And her programs are strength based, structured, and progressive. They're designed around dumbbells and largely a bench. There's a little more equipment in the app, but sessions run between 30 to 60 minutes, and the format varies depending on the program that you choose. Some have a HIIT adjacent component, some of them are just straight lifting. But the through line in all of them, though, is the intensity and progression. And most of you probably know that if you're clicking on this video, what her programs are about. She also does have an app, like I said, and in the app, there is some more nutrition adjacent content, but it doesn't exist in YouTube. So I'll come back to that. So let me name who this is actually built for and who it isn't. Not an opinion, but like the mechanism behind it. So Caroline Girvan programs are built for women who want to build muscle, increase strength, and to follow a structured program without necessarily needing to go to a gym or hiring a trainer. And that's what they deliver and they are designed to do, and they do very, very well. But what they are not designed to do, and this is the part that matters, is guarantee fat loss, because Caroline doesn't even mention fat loss in most of her programs. And I don't think that's an oversight. I think she just assumes that fat loss is not everyone's goal. And I think she's right for doing so. So if you came to Caroline Girvan expecting the workouts alone to drive fat loss, I think that's kind of where the confusion starts. And that confusion is the reason that this video exists. By week 3 in Caroline Girvan programs, you've probably figured out what I mean by intensity, probably not even that long. The output is genuinely higher than most things I've ever really tried. You're definitely putting in the work. But the question is that work actually producing the body that you want? Or what is it producing on your body? And is that the same thing as fat loss? So here's what Caroline Girvan programs are genuinely excellent at. First, building muscle. It is one of the most effective free programs available for building lean muscle that I have ever found. The mechanism is progressive overload through compound movements with consistent structure. And what that means for you is more muscle tissue, meaning higher resting metabolism over time. Your body burns more at rest than it did before you started. And that is not a small thing. That definitely compounds over time. And second is higher output. If your current baseline activity is low, then adding Caroline can definitely tip you into a calorie deficit through that increased energy expenditure alone. Your total daily output goes up. And for some women, especially at the start, that's actually enough for them to see early fat loss, even without the explicit nutrition changes. And what that means for you is that Caroline Girvan can work as a fat loss tool in the right context for the right person. But the question is whether or not you're that right person and what you need to add if you're not. So here's where it breaks down. And I want to be specific here because this is actually a behavioral pattern and not a program flaw. Caroline workouts, as I've said, are hard, like genuinely hard. If you go watch one before you start, it looks intense. And for a lot of women, especially women who have a history of starting and stopping fitness programs, that intensity can trigger something specific. You see the workout, you anticipate failing at it, and you either don't start it or you start and then you feel like it's difficult and you interpret that difficulty as it isn't working or that you can't do it. And so you just stop working out at all. But Caroline's own philosophy is you versus you, not you versus the person in that thumbnail, not you and your neighbor, you versus you in that moment, just you today and against the version of you that wants to quit. And I think that's really the right framing here because most people hear and think, yes, that's inspiring, but then they still quit. Because hearing the reframe and internalizing it are two very different things. And the gap between those two things is where most people lose. The second breakdown is nutrition. If you're doing Caroline Girvan programs and you're not in a calorie deficit, you won't lose fat. You'll get stronger, you'll build muscle, your output will increase, but fat loss specifically requires a deficit. And the program doesn't necessarily create one unless your output goes up significantly when you first get started. And the app does have some guidance on nutrition, as I said, if you choose to use it. But the free programs on YouTube don't address it. Again, because fat loss isn't the assumed goal. If you came assuming it was the goal and nobody named it explicitly, then of course it feels like the program failed you, but it didn't. The expectation just was wrong. But this is a completely fixable problem. So here's what it realistically did for me and what I think you can realistically expect. So I lost 40 pounds all while doing Caroline Girvan programs, but I did just the programs and building the habit of muscle building first, and then I added the calorie deficit. And those two things were separate. One cannot live without the other in that outcome. And what I think you can realistically expect is if you pair Caroline with a deficit, even a modest one, you'll definitely build muscle. and lose fat at the same time. And that's a body recomposition. And Caroline Girvan is honestly one of the best free tools available on the muscle building side, as far as I'm concerned. And I want to tell you where I'm coming from because I am a licensed counselor, and that intimidation pattern that I described earlier, seeing something hard, anticipating failing, opting out before you ever tried it, that's a documented behavioral pattern. So it's the expectation mismatch, believing that the effort alone would produce the specific result and then quitting when it doesn't. Those are not motivation problems, those are behavioral patterns. And knowing the difference can really change what you do next. So 6 years in, and I still love using Caroline Girvan programs both on YouTube and in the app. Say it with me. And that's my honest take. So is Caroline Girvan enough for fat loss? Here's the actual answer in 3 different buckets. If you're pairing Caroline with a calorie deficit, then yes, it is enough. It's actually more than enough. You'll build muscle, the output goes up, and the deficit does the rest. This is the combination that I use for basically every pound that I lost. If Caroline Girvan alone puts you with a high enough output that you naturally drift into the deficit, then you may see fat loss without explicit tracking, especially early on. Like I said, if you're new and your baseline activity level was very low when you started, you cannot rely on this though indefinitely. At some point, the output plateaus and the nutrition becomes the lever you have to pull. And again, we don't stay in the deficit forever, just for a little while. And if you're doing Caroline Girvan and eating at maintenance or above, then no, the programs are not going to bypass the nutrition. And that's not a judgment. That's just how our body works. And the work matters. The deficit matters more, though, especially for fat loss. And you can do both. You don't have to choose, but you do have to acknowledge both. So if this video finally named what's been confusing you about Caroline Girvan and fat loss, then the next video you should go watch is this one on how to figure out what your plan should look like. And I go into exact calorie deficits, what practically works from home without obsessively tracking or without cutting out food groups that you love and without making it your full-time job. So I'll link that here. And if you've been doing Caroline and not seeing fat loss, you're probably just one ingredient away. And that video should help you out. So make sure you subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye, friends.